It's back. It's back. Our fuel cell's welded and back. What up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, man. So Raven ended up taking my fuel cell with him to work and got his co-worker to get this thing all welded up for us. So huge shout out to him. Ain't gonna lie, bro, came out pretty freaking dope. And how sick is that? We're gonna have a 15-gallon fuel cell in the stock location, hooked to the stock fill. I mean, that's freaking sick, bro. I am stoked about that. And yeah, also stopped at Phoenix Nut and Bolt, and I got all of the hardware that we need to finalize not only bolting up our fuel pump with the little bracket that we fabricated in the last video, but also to finally bolt up our damn fuel tank. Fuel cell. First thing we're gonna do is I got some rubber mat. This is that stuff that you put in the bottom of your toolbox. I did see somebody recommend this in the comments whenever we were talking about it in a previous video, but I want to put some kind of isolator that's gonna like kind of absorb vibration for one, and maybe muffle like sounds, like vibrating sounds between this metal and the fuel cell potentially. So what I'm gonna do is actually use some spray adhesive to basically glue this onto here. And then I'll come back and I'll trim it where it needs to be trimmed. But I ain't gonna spray it up here, because I don't trust that this stuff isn't gonna get overspray all over our trucks up there. So I'm gonna spray the aluminum, and I'm also gonna spray a side of this, then let it kind of sit to get a little tacky, and then I'll apply it. Ooh, would you just look at it? Just freaking look at it. Whoa, whoa. Oh, wow. Yep, I think I got everything. I need you guys to check down inside of there for me. Let's see. What's it look like? Shoot you around. Yep. You guys see any debris? You see any debris? Whoa, look at that fancy little guy right there. That's where all the horsepowers are going to come from. They got to come through one of those little holes right there. All the horsepowers. Oh, there's my fill. How'd that come out? You guys see some good penetration in there? Oh my god. Baby, I think I need to chill on the Red Bulls. Yeah. I bought a fuel cell and it came with foam inside of it. Should I leave it in there or take it out if I'm running E85? Yes, you can safely leave the foam in your fuel cell if you are running E85. While some materials may degrade over time with ethanol exposure, fuel cell foam is generally compatible with E85 and provides important safety benefits. The foam prevents fuel sloshing and vapor concentration, reducing the risk of explosion in case of fire. According to Summit Racing. That's what it says. Ah, shit, I wasn't even recording. I'm just kidding. In with the foam! I will say this was not fun to get out. It should be easier to get in. Nailed it! Nice! Hey, it doesn't echo no more. Oh yeah. Oh Ooh, shiny. Hey, screw you, Braven. I got my own little pot of gold.
That's cool.
Give it back. All right, so tightening this thing down, autofocus. Haha, there you are. Tightening this thing down caused it to kind of bow right here in the center. I assumed that it might do that, especially since that foam, that rubber that we just put on there, I did not put it on the bolting points. So it is pulling this, but I want it to pull like that. So to combat that, I tried to break up the edge right here to put a little bend in there so it wouldn't actually bow out this direction. It would just apply more pressure towards the fuel cell. But I apparently didn't bend it enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it off, try to put a little bit more of a bend in this edge so that hopefully we can get it to not do that. Oh yeah, that should definitely do the job. Oh yes. All right, let's try this again. Oh, hell freaking yeah, problem solved. Dude, that is sick. I actually really like how that came out. And it'll just make it more rigid, you know? Just putting that little bit of bend in it will make it so much more sturdy. Anyhow, this thing is ready to go ahead and throw it back in there. This is my old hose for my filler neck. This connected to where I pump my gas, and then this side connected to the OEM fuel tank. So this is not going to be long enough anymore. I needed to be much longer, so I stopped at O'Reilly's, and this is all they had available. You had to buy the full length. So definitely not going to need all of this, but I do need probably about 1 foot to 1.5 feet, but we're going to get the fuel cell up in there, and I need to kind of measure and see where I need to cut this. But yeah, this is just going to slide on right here, and then I'll put a hose clamp on that, and then it will drape over to my filler on the truck, and then obviously slide over and then put another hose clamp. I already have a hose down there for the vent that is super long, so the one that's down there is already going to be long enough to reach this because it went to the top of the stock fuel tank all the way right here. So you see where the filler went? That hose went all the way to right here, so that's long enough. I'm actually going to have to cut some off of it. Alright, so here's that hose I was talking about that's really long. So as you can see, it's all the way on top of the fuel cell right now. So I need to cut that off about right there and just slide it over our vent. And then our fill has to go from here to right there. So it's not crazy long, but it's definitely longer than what the stock one was. And then bow, baby! What you know about that? Freaking evilenergy fuel cell is a direct bolt-in to the Blazer. Like, you could literally just take this fuel cell out and bolt it into another Blazer with no issues. That's freaking sick. So I'm going to try to get this in somewhat of a straight line all the way around. It obviously doesn't have to be perfect, but I don't want to be like way off. So we're just going to do our backwards tape technique here. Like that, and line it up to my Sharpie mark that I made. And now I can trace all the way around that with my Sharpie, and I have something to follow. I'm using a silver Sharpie, by the way. Absolutely killed it, dude. I have to say, I don't think that could have came out any better. That is so freaking perfect. And you know what I love about this whole entire thing? It's gonna be so much easier to take it out if I ever need to than what it was to take out the stock fuel tank. You know what I'm saying? I mean, how many times have I had to take the thing out and just dump gas all over the freaking ground? Yep. Okay, moving on to the fuel pump. So I was thinking to myself how I kind of like the way this thing looks being raw steel like that, and you know, like, it's gonna rust. No matter what, it's gonna rust. There ain't nothing that we're gonna be able to do to stop it from rusting. I mean, unless I clear coated it. And it's either clear coated, in which, I mean, I don't love it that damn much. If I'm gonna get my gun out and mix paint and all that kind of stuff, I'm just gonna spray the thing black. But I'm thinking about trying something on this that I've never done before. Well, I guess I have done it before, but with a knife. I used to make knives like years ago, and whenever I say make knives, I made like 3. It was like one of those hobbies I got into before YouTube, and then kind of decided that, yeah, I don't have the correct tools to do this, and I can't make it as nice as I want to make it, so I just kind of gave up and continued working on my Civic. Anyhow, I'm going to try to scorch this thing. I think that's what it's called. Like whenever you get it super hot and then you scorch it in oil, that makes it like, it creates like a finish on it that I guess doesn't rust. I don't know. I'm gonna try it. I've never done it before on something like this, so let's give it a shot. First thing we're gonna do is go ahead and clean all of our marks off of it so that they don't get scorched onto there. Now I'm gonna clamp a pair of vice grips on here nice and tight, because this is the only way we're gonna be able to hold this thing. So I'm just gonna let that sit like that for a while I go and get our oil ready. I've got some oil drain pans out here and a bunch of like used motor oil. Figured I could find something I could just dip it in, you know? Alright, just got some used motor oil out here. I don't know if there's gas in this. There probably is, so it might light on fire. Nope, it didn't. There we go. Definitely sizzling. This is actually super interesting, man. It's been a really long time since I've done this to a piece of steel, and I'm interested to see what it's gonna look like. So I'm gonna let that sit for a second. I gotta go grab a magnet to get it out of there. I'm gonna do it one more time. It kind of only worked on half of it because I really let the heat focus on only half of it. So I'm gonna do the other half now. What it does is it turns the metal kind of like a blackish bluish color from the oil. The area it didn't work was still shiny metal, you know, so you could tell it didn't like absorb it into the oil or whatever it is that it does. This is way hotter this time. I don't know if you guys can see, it's kind of glowing. Oh shit, yep, there it goes. Whew. Probably not good to breathe that in. I was trying to hold it this time because last time there's actually some plastic on it where it touched the oil pan because it melted it. So the way you're supposed to do this is whenever you're supposed to get the whole entire thing glowing red. So you see the area that I had glowing red is really dark black on both sides. That's because that was as hot as you're supposed to get the whole entire thing. If I got the whole thing to look like that, then the whole thing would have turned black like that. But we didn't. That's all right. I kind of like how it looks. It's got kind of some of the rainbow in it from the heat, and like it's blotchy and just inconsistent. I think it's a cool look, or a hot look, I should say. All right, it's the next day, and I think they're doing some kind of construction out there on the road, so. But now let's go ahead and get this thing mounted up in there. And dude, throw it in the comments down below. Come on now. Tell me that that's not a cool look. It's either this or I was just gonna flat out paint the damn thing black. I don't think it looks terrible, but anyhow, let's get it mounted up in there. And guess what we get to do today, if I have wire. I need to go through all my wiring stuff and see if I have wire. I actually think that I have a relay kit, fuel pump relay kit. But I don't know if it's big enough. I need to find it. That and we gotta do AN lines, yay. Oh, that's a record. Went all over the place. Look, man, a product introduction just isn't a product introduction unless you actually throw the shit. So, you know, I know I risk sometimes damaging things, but like I said, a product introduction's not a product introduction unless you're throwing shit. So we got a whole lot of evilenergy stuff here that we need to get installed onto the Blazer. Some of these are just some little fittings and stuff that we're gonna need. Oh my God, I'm about to have a lot of stickers. All right, so this right here is our new fuel filter. I need to find a place to get this thing installed down there somewhere. It also comes with a mounting bracket. I was kind of thinking about mounting this on the side of the fuel cell. I thought that would have been cool if this was actually just welded straight onto it, but I didn't have time to get it figured out before I sent that thing with Braven to get welded up. So we'll have to figure out a place to actually bolt this, but that's fine. At least we have a mounting bracket. It's going to be a lot better. Oh, shoot. It's got a damn arrow, dude. That is sick. It tells you the direction. I'm not going to lie. I struggled with that big time whenever my old filter that I had down there, that was just a random that I got off of Amazon. And I couldn't figure out which way it should be flowing. The same with the one I have on khaki. And then the fuel filter comes with the end pieces that screw in so you can put your desired AN fitting size. We're going to be using -8. This is a 16-foot kit. This is 16 feet of -8 PTFE AN line, and it comes with an assortment of fittings that we are very much so going to need. That was a 16-foot kit. This was a 20-foot kit. I was assuming that maybe 20 feet was going to be enough, and then I was kind of worried that I might run out. So hopefully we have some of this left, because if we do, we can use it on the EP3 to replace a couple of lines out there. evilenergy PTFE fuel hose installation instructions. Instructions, man? What is this? We be freestyling around here. We don't need instructions. All right, I went through and I took all the fittings out of their individually little Ziploc bags. Now I have a little treasure chest full of freaking AN fittings, man. See, now our fuel filter is -8. And you can have it as, oh shoot, is that bigger? What size is that? Dang, I think that's -10. That is -10, bro. It comes with -10 fittings, and then these are probably, yeah, -6. So you got -6, -8, and -10. Damn, got me feeling like I should have ran -10. Evil side, baby. Yeah, I was sitting there thinking to myself, do I feel like doing wiring right now or fuel lines? Well, I normally like to do the hardest part, or the part that you don't want to do first. I decided on fuel lines, screw wiring. Alright, so we're going to start off back here, fuel cell. I want to run our feed line from the cell to the pump. And I did notice that these 90s, they swoop really wide, like they all do. Like this is just a standard 90. evilenergy does have a tight radius 90-degree fitting available. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and order some of those. We're going to move forward for now, but just know I want to replace these with some tight radius 90s coming out of the fuel cell and then off of the pump to head up that direction as well. But for now, we're going to go ahead and make these work. So first, I have a -10 to -8 AN adapter. And since this is the final, like, we are actually assembling. So we are trying to get this thing ready to fire up. So I need to make sure that I'm tightening everything as I'm putting it on, including this block off need to be tightened. In which there are 2 -10 outputs on top of the fuel cell as well. We're going to utilize one of them for our return. The second one, I do have this block off that I was going to block it off, but I need a vent on this. So if you guys want to help me with that, with finding, I haven't even Googled it yet or tried to find one myself, but I need to find a rollover safe vent I believe is what it would be called. I need a fuel cell vent that has a rollover ball inside of it, and I want to see if they make them to where you can just screw it on to an AN fitting. I think that would be the perfect place, is that extra -10 output up there, or input, whatever you want to call it, to actually put a vent on the fuel cell. But I want it to be a rollover safe one. So if in the event of us ever rolling over, fuel isn't just gonna pour out all over the place, you know? So another thing is these fittings that are on the fuel pump itself. These fittings came on it. They have an O-ring that actually seals them. So I'm gonna put a little dash of assembly lube on that O-ring so it goes in smoothly and we don't have to worry about potentially ripping it. Just a little bit to lube that thing up all the way around. Screw that back on there. All right, now out of the fuel cell, obviously we're gonna run a 90. And the reason why I went with this output that's a little bit further away from the fuel from the fuel pump is to give it a little bit more room for it to kind of gradually bend over to it, because they are far from in line with one another. That's the reason why I want a tight radius 90 here. All right, I have the ends of the fittings taken off now. And basically we need our line to be from this point to this point right here. So what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and slide our hose onto one side and then just kind of hold it up there and see how long we need it. You know what, I am gonna try a straight on here and see if I like that better, because it does seem like it doesn't take too terribly much for this line to bend. Yeah, see, that's actually not terrible, dude. I'm gonna go with a straight right here. Put a piece of tape over where we need to cut, a Sharpie, and just mark our line. Now we can go cut that. So I guess this little tool just helps you make sure that your line is still nice and round, and it makes it easier to kind of check and make sure that you cut it nice and square. Other than that, I don't know what else this is for, but I'm sure we'll, oh, you know what? Probably for putting the knurling on, probably helps push it on. First thing we gotta do is slide the fitting end over with the tape still on there. And now we can remove the tape. At this point, we need to flare some of this steel braiding up and get it away from the actual PTFE line, the rubber. Now we can slide the knurling over the rubber. Got to go in between the braid and the plastic. Oh yeah, look at that. That makes it so much easier to push that on. Make sure to get it on there all the freaking way, baby. And you can look down in there and see that the plastic line is flush. Now all we gotta do is slide our fitting in and then bring the back portion up. Start threading it. And then what I like to do is put a little bit of assembly lube on those threads to help it go in a little easier. First fitting complete. Now to do our 90. All right, now before we install this line, we're gonna blow it out with some compressed air, really good, to make sure we get all the little cutting bits and everything out of there. Because you'd be surprised, bro, a lot of stuff goes in there whenever you cut these lines. All right, up next is the fuel filter. I want to get this thing mounted up, and basically, other than the fuel pressure regulator, that would be the last thing that we need to mount. So I've already been down there kind of messing with it, and I want to do a 90 in, and we're going to be doing a 45 out, and we have to do a 90 out of the fuel pump. So it's going to be 90 out of the fuel pump, 90 into the fuel filter, 45 out, and then from there, we get to run all the way up to the fuel rail. All right, looking good so far, man. We come out of the fuel cell and we go straight into the pump, in which I was going to put a 90 right here, because either way I want my line to swoop over next to the fuel tank. I don't want it just kind of out here floating, you know what I'm saying? So I noticed that the 180 degree fitting would actually work out a little better than putting a 90 there. Not to mention, I don't want to run out of 90s. I have a feeling that I'm going to need them, like maybe up there by the fuel rails and stuff, so I don't want to use up all my damn 90s. And where else am I really going to use 180 degree, you know? So this thing wraps around, and it's, dude, the line sits perfectly inside of this little lip that we have for the mount between the fuel cell mount and the fuel cell. So I went ahead and I tucked it in there, and then I popped a couple holes back here in the back just to put some of this wire through it and to hold the fuel line there. And if you notice, it's not tight. You know what I mean? I don't want it super tight to where it's going to start chafing into the line, but it's not going to allow the line to move. Plus, the line sits in there pretty damn good. Honestly, I don't think it'd even come out if I didn't have those, but I figured I better put something just to be safe. And then the line wraps up to our fuel filter. Now, where I really wanted to put the fuel filter would have been right here, because it had been the easiest to access. My plan, or my goal here, is to have the fuel filter relatively easy to access, you know what I mean? With it back here, I should be able to get to it without even having to jack the truck up. So if I'm ever having an issue, I've watched a lot of street racing channel, and that's one of the things that I've seen them have to do in the middle of a race, is pull their fuel filter and check it and clean it and put it back together whenever they're having some issues. So I just wanted to keep my fuel filter accessible, you know what I'm saying, just in case there's ever an issue. Not to mention for maintenance, of course. It also makes it easier whenever I need to maintain it. I can just, you know, unscrew this line, move it out of the way, and then take the end of the filter off right here, and then pull my filter out, clean it, put it all back together, and it's easy to access. Now, I know it's really close to the rear end, but believe me, the rear end ain't gonna come anywhere near that damn thing. So we're good, man. Clearing is clearing. So, and then out of the fuel filter, I'm gonna run this 45 so that the line goes straight up and kind of buries it inside of this little crevice right here. I want it to sit against that. And then we're gonna go up and then go through the frame. Now, I can't really move on. I need to do some stuff to the factory lines and stuff that are here. Well, we took all the factory fuel lines out, but the only thing that's left is this vent. This was the vent for the stock gas tank that ran all the way up to the front to the charcoal canister. And as you can see, it runs all the way up there, and then it comes out right here, and it still has the rubber line on it. I need to get rid of this. I'm going to take this out. And it's got a factory like plastic bracket right there that bolts to the frame, and it kind of clips in. And then there's another one right here. So I need to unbolt that. I'm going to pull these plastic clips off, and then I want to kind of grind the teeth out of them, like sand it out, so you can see it a little better on this one. These are going all the way up the frame. If you can see, there's another one right there. That those used to hold the stock fuel lines. So I figured if I pull them off, and those little teeth that it has inside of there, the ones in the middle, I can just kind of grind those out, and then we can run our AN lines through here and then bolt it back on, and that would be ideal because it's a factory piece. It actually wraps around the frame on the top on a couple of them, and then it's got a bolting point, and then the bottom right here is actually holding my brake line that's running to the rear. So we'd still utilize that for holding our brake line, but then be able to also use it to run our AN lines through. And then I don't have to drill any extra holes or add any extra anything. That'd be nice and fixed using the factory mounts. And then from there, it's going to run inside of the frame out the front into the engine bay. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is work on getting that vent out because we don't need that anymore. And then get all those plastic clips out up on the bench so that we can sand all those teeth out of them, and then we can bring them back down here and start routing our AN line. All right, got that vent line out of there that we no longer need. Got rid of some clutter, and then also got all of those little plastic brackets I was talking about out of there, and I numbered them. Number 1 is starting all the way to the back. all the way up to 4. We have 4 of them all together, and I numbered them because they are all slightly different. These two are similar, but I also made myself some marks on the frame, like where these things are sitting. There's a number 1 down there on the frame, 2, 3, and 4, because I noticed whenever I take them off, it was going to be really hard to find where they went. Anyhow, so now, like I said, the idea is just to basically sand those notches out of there. I want to leave the one on the end and obviously this side, so that then we can just put our basically our AN line will just sit inside of there. It's not going to like clip in or nothing, but it's going to sit inside of there to where it's not going to allow it to move. So I got to do that to all 4 pieces. Just go ahead and knock those teeth out. Alright, so as you can see, now there's going to be plenty enough room to be able to run our feed and return line through those. And they're factory, bro! I don't have to drill no damn holes or anything. I'm actually super freaking excited about that. Now, let's get underneath there and, well, actually, now I got to run the AN line through the frame. Yeah, just leave those there. Dun dun dun! The evilenergy fuel pressure regulator. This is the last thing basically that I need to mount and then run the lines to everything. So I'm having an issue here that I think I'm gonna ask for your guys' advice on this, on what exactly it is you guys think is the best plan of attack here. So there's many ways that I can go about this. I've been just staring at it for I don't know, I've been out here just looking at it now. Since the last clip, it's been about an hour, and I literally cannot decide because honestly, I wish that I already had the high ram manifold on here, but I'm gonna have to wait a little bit for that because it just sucks that nothing that we do right now is going to be final, but it is going to get us to where we're going to be able to start it up and drive it until we acquire everything else that we need. Like, dude, that $1,500 or $1,200, I think it was like $1,200. That $1,200 intake manifold, I literally need to spend like a whole nother $1,000 to use it on injectors and throttle body and map sensors and all that kind of stuff. It's freaking ridiculous, but we'll get there one day. Anyhow, so as you guys know, I've been trying to contemplate whether I was going to bring my AN lines through the frame the same as I did before. Show it. There we go. So that's where the factory fuel lines came through. And before I had adapters that went from the hard line to AN, and then my AN lines just came up over here behind my alternator bracket. And of course, with the factory fuel rails, the feed and return were both on this side. So I had a feed and a return fuel line running up here with all of this madness right here that I've been trying to get rid of, which just cluttered it up even more. So in order to run it through the frame, I'm basically going to have to do the exact same thing, is run my fuel lines up this way. The only other option is to bring the fuel lines up over the transmission and in between the transmission and the firewall, in which there is enough space. The only issue with that is anytime that I go to pull the transmission or something, the fuel lines are going to be annoying. They're going to be in my way. So, in which I do plan, well, I don't plan, I know for a fact that as I start to add more power to this thing, the transmission is going to be my next problem. I'm probably going to grenade that sumbitch pretty quick. We'll cross that whenever that bridge comes. So if I brought the fuel line up the back, then I'd be able to just go straight into one of the fuel rails, and then I'd be able to use this crossover on the front, and then the other fuel rail would run up to my fuel pressure regulator, which I plan on mounting on the firewall right there. And then it would have to go down, the return out of the pressure regulator would go down the same place our feed is coming up, and then go back to all that madness in the back. So either that, or I was also looking at the instructions on this fuel pressure regulator. So you can run this 2 different ways. So you can either run your feed from the tank to the fuel rail, jump, and then it jumps over, and then out of the fuel rail it goes into the pressure regulator, and then out of the pressure regulator your return goes back to the tank. And that's what I just explained. So basically it's that setup. Or we can go with this setup to where you run the feed into the pressure regulator and then out of the regulator to the fuel rail, and then it jumps over the fuel rail, and then you just cap off one of the ends, in which I noticed that this does come with a cap. Here it is. It did come with a cap to just cap off one of the ends if you need to. And then the return comes out of the regulator and just goes back to the tank. So if we were to run it in this configuration, I basically wouldn't have to have this in the engine bay. I'd be able to mount this down on the frame. For the most part, it's the same as running one of those Corvette style fuel filters, one of those Corvette style fuel filters, because it has a built-in regulator. And then basically running it that way, I'd only have to run one line up into the engine bay. Because I'm trying to avoid from it being cluttered and ugly, but at the same time, I'm also want it to be functional, and I don't want it to be a pain in the ass whenever I ever have to work on any other aspect of the damn truck. Have to deal with the fuel lines, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I think I'm going to sleep on this and try to decide exactly how it is I want to run it. Unfortunately, I know we're nearing the end. The Blazer is damn near ready to fire it up and hear what the cam sounds like. But bear with me, guys. I really want to do this right. So I'm going to kind of brainstorm and I need to do some research and see if there's any cons to running the system in this configuration. I don't know if the fuel pressure regulator, like being so far from the fuel rails and then there being a dead end on the fuel rail, if that's like, if you run into problems with doing that whenever, I don't know, you have a turbo application, or if there's something there that causes it to starve for fuel somehow. Another thing that I was thinking is it would keep this out of the engine bay. These things, like if you ever have a pressure regulator go bad and it starts leaking or something, that's one less potential leak around the hot engine, you know? I don't know, dude. I'm thinking out loud here. Put it in the comments down below what it is you guys think that we should do. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. Like I said, I want to sleep on this, and I'm going to wait for Braven to get home from work also. Just shoot ideas back and forth with him. Sometimes it helps with situations like this just to kind of talk it out with somebody and go over the pros and cons and whatever. But anyhow, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I think we're definitely on a good track. I really like how the fuel system's coming out back here. Everything's really clean, and everything flows really nice. I think it's going to be one hell of a sick-ass setup. We just got to get it finished up, dude. Like I said, I'm going to do some research, and I'll pick back up on this tomorrow with you guys. Peace, and I'll see you then.